May I ask your opinion on Nanling? Conan, Half Moon Eye. Evil fun, quite disconnected. Very reliable in critical moments, whispered, AI Haibara, trembling. The organized aura on that person's body. Shuichi Akai. Although a bit suspicious, he is a good man for the moment. Qin Jiu An Shitou. Who is he? What is your opinion on 7 Conan? The underground doctor associated with the organization is not a good person. AI Haibara. 7 brothers. He is a good person with a cold exterior and a warm interior. Shuichi Akai. Although he has always said that he has nothing to do with the organization, why don't I believe him? An Shizuru. He is a person who is in the dark and has a bright heart. Qin Jiu. Oh, chatters vest, so. What about chart? Conan, filled with indignation. I will definitely catch the loyal dog of the black organization. AI Haibara, gritting his teeth. He killed his sister with such cruel means, I won't forgive him. An Shitou. I don't understand him, but we are also accomplices, laughs, Shuichi Akai. Although he is not clear about his real position. He has a grudge, helpless, Qin Jiu, frowning. Has strong abilities and is trustworthy, but has a bad personality. Finally, would you like to interview me? Nanling. As a tissue experiment subject that was finally released, I don't want to cause trouble everywhere. I just want to have a salty fish. Well, at first, with a happy smile, Conan's fellow without female lead book friend group 272986512 keywords of the novel. I am the salary thief of a distillery. No pop-ups, I am the salary thief of a distillery. Download the complete text, I am the salary thief of a distillery. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. 3 years, do you know how I spent these 3 years? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. 3 years, do you know how I spent these 3 years? The sun is bright and the sky is clear and clear. Nanling took a deep breath in the fresh outdoor air and felt that life had instantly gained momentum. This is the first time he has walked out of this building during his 3 years of hard work in Conan World. That's right, this is his 3rd year traveling to Conan World, and also his 3rd year spent as an experimental subject at the distillery. For the past 3 years, Nanling has been trapped in this building, and as the subject of a human experiment planned by the famous black-clothed organization, it has been closely monitored. As for now, as the only survivor in the entire experiment, although it is only a semi-finished product, it has sufficient value for the organization. In addition, with his excellent learning ability in medicine and a clean and trustworthy background, the organization ultimately decided to make the most of his resources and released him. The experiment brought not only a stronger body compared to normal people, but also his very young face. It's better to say that the latter is what the organization values. His body grew much slower than others, and the body he had traveled through was almost 20 years old this year, but his appearance looked like a 14-year-old boy. It's very deceptive. Nanling likes it very much. The original owner of this body was a child raised by a distillery and has been brainwashed since childhood, so it can still be considered trusted by the organization. After Nanling inexplicably wore it, she didn't receive any useful memories, nothing more than being abducted and sold when she was a child. But it helped him confirm the world he was in. Because the person in charge of this group of children was the famous model worker. Qin Jiu. The appearance of anime is different from that of Third Dimension, but the prominent silver long hair of Qin Wine plus the symbolic black hat and windbreaker, only blind people can't recognize it. So, Nanling thought silently, with such prominent features, why hasn't Qin Wine been caught yet? Is this also a part of Kushui? And the short and sturdy attendant next to the Jin is naturally vodka. So far, apart from the 2 members of the organization with code names that Nanling has seen, they are Galliano, the person in charge of this experiment. It seems that he has not appeared in the anime before. And also a member of the Pharmaceutical Research and Development Department, surely, Nanling has never seen her before. Fortunately, I haven't seen it before. Anyway, Sherry is destined to jump backwards in the future. If she sees her own face, how can she find a way to blend in with the identity of the red square and feel at ease in the future? People who have watched anime know that distilleries take jujube pills. What are the benefits of standing in the dark side? No. Just that elementary school student from the opposite side is not enough to handle. Not to mention the bug like Shuichi Akai, Shibuyaki, etc., waiting for a lot of secrets. Nanling sighed and felt sad for the distillery. So, the short-term goal is to find a way to jump back from the distillery. It's not easy to talk about. Nanling does not have a protagonist aura, and according to his observation, the strength of the black organization in this world is really not average. Not only do they have their own organizational bases in many countries, but they also bribe various talents from different backgrounds, from powerful legislators to grassroots gangs on the streets. It's unclear which person is a peripheral member of the organization. If you want to run away while saving your own life, as expected, you still need the help of the protagonist. In short, taking advantage of the protagonist's halo. First step. Confirm which year is before the main storyline. Nanling can be 100% certain that the main storyline has not yet arrived, because the current time is still normal, and there will be no Kushue timeline where today is summer and tomorrow is winter. And Sherry has already obtained the code, which means at most 5 years ago. Nanling also heard that there was a strong newcomer in the organization, whose code name was unclear. It was likely that it was Shuichi Akai, whose code name was Rai. I don't know if Scottish whiskey is dead or not. If you're not dead, can you try to save it? Maybe it's possible to have a good impression on the red side. End of this chapter. Chapter 2, this code name sounds quite good. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2, this codename sounds quite good, Nanling. A kind and elderly female voice sounded from behind. Nanling turned around and tried to show her most obedient side. Teacher. While shouting, Nanling sighed in her heart. Who would have thought that after crossing time, they would have to learn again? I am still learning what I already know. Yes, Nanling, male, is a doctor. During the experiment, or more accurately, the subject, Nanling only needs to apply his medical knowledge from his past life and show a little bit of medical talent, which is enough to attract the attention of the organization. Going back and forth. That's how it became. At least my life has been temporarily saved. That gentleman already knows about you, Galliano said in an old man's calm tone. Your code name is Chart. Galliano, no one who sees her will associate it with illegal organizations, right? She looks very ordinary, an elderly person who can grow flowers and vegetables in her garden. She is kind and kind. Normally, it always looks smiling. Of course, her expression never wavered as she looked at the experimental object wailing in pain. Nanling doesn't have much evaluation on this. Is it easy to mess with people who can get code names in the organization? Oh, there really is. Isn't it just Nanling himself? Although there is a code name, it is not because of Nanling's own abilities. It must be because of his identity as an experimental subject, and the reason for the loss is due to potential. I estimate that there will be surveillance personnel around me for at least a year in the future. Speaking of the code name, Chateau is a type of liqueur invented by French Caldusian monks. It was born in the 1840s and is made by extracting 130 herbaceous plants from distilled alcohol for aging. The alcohol concentration is 55%, and Nanling has never tasted it before. However, it is a relatively niche wine that Nanling stumbled upon when he was interested in medicinal wine in his past life. So that gentleman doesn't really run a distillery, does he? This wine also has a very interesting legend. It is said that in 1605, the artillery marshal of King Henry IV of France submitted an alchemical manuscript recording the elixir of immortality to the Caldusian monastery in nearby Paris. This manuscript was ultimately presented to the Grand Monastery of Kaldusi according to religious hierarchy. Since then, the monks have used this manuscript to brew plant-based medicinal wine. Is the wine brewed according to the elixir of immortality also implying the experiments he has experienced? It's a bit interesting. A obedient smile curved around Nanling's mouth and he bowed slightly to Galliano. Thank you for the organization's appreciation. Galliano nodded and said, you're a smart child, and I won't say much about it. You've seen many consequences of betraying the organization in recent years, so it's better not to have any thoughts that you shouldn't have. Otherwise. She sighed, I don't know how to protect you. Don't worry, teacher. Nanling continued to pretend to be obedient. Fortunately, he looks at most 15 now, which is not too out of line. Just. If my friends from previous lives see my lifelong fame, Galliano didn't react much, he still looked lazy and smiling, as if strolling around in his backyard. Your training will be handled by Qin Jiu, who is a highly valued member of that gentleman. In fact, coming to train you this time is also giving him a break. When Nanling heard that Qin Jiu was in charge of his training, he already felt a bolt from the blue. Training? What training? Am I not a doctor? He struggled to organize his logic and said, I thought. The organization wanted me to be a researcher. That gentleman thinks it's a pity not to take advantage of your good physical fitness, Galliano said lightly, not caring about Nanling's psychological experience. If you have good talent, it's not impossible to let you join the action group in the future. However, of course, I still hope that you can stay in the research group. After all, your talent in this area is indeed outstanding. If you continue to study with me for a few more years, you may be able to enter Shirley's group in the future. That gentleman probably means the same thing, but he wants to train you again. At least not like me, he doesn't have any ability to protect himself. He's here. Needless to say, Nanling naturally noticed the famous black Porsche 356A. Nanling sighed obediently. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. How to survive in the hand of Qin wine, online, etc. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. How to survive in the hand of Qin wine, online waiting. I'm quite anxious. How do I feel that Qin Jiu doesn't really like my appearance? Southernling's belly slanders. Isn't he going to beat me to death? Just thinking about it makes me feel like my future life has lost hope. Qin Jiu frowned slightly as he looked at the innocent and obedient young man in front of him. Although I heard that I came from an experimental background, I don't know what that gentleman really thinks about how to work in an action group with this personality. However, that has nothing to do with him. Regardless of the abilities of the new member codename chart, he only needs to complete the tasks assigned by the organization. Regarding this vacation, it's not really a vacation either. Because there was a slight mistake in the last operation, I was almost caught by the tail of the group of vultures who were moved by the FBI. All relevant personnel will be suspended for inspection. That gentleman asked him to come and take care of the newcomers. Chart. Follow me. Qin Jiu nodded to Galliano and glanced at Nanling again. What else can Nanling say? Helplessly, she followed Qin Jiu onto the car. Although, it feels good to be free from the prison where he was imprisoned for 3 years. No one spoke along the way except for Vodka, who had been curiously trying to observe him. Qin Jiu took him to a training base of the organization. Nanling is not sure of the specific location, only knows that it is near Tokyo and does not know the specific location. Nanling was still thinking about the training content when he heard Qin Jiu speak, "Let's play with me first." Nanling remained silent. Nanling wants to cry. Brother, I'm a doctor. I'm fighting you. Are you trying to kill me? Seeing that he didn't react much, Qin Jiu explained again, it's to see how your physical abilities really are. Nanling was about to nod and agree, but Qin Jiu attacked as if he had lost patience. Nanling was startled. In his past life, if it was not necessary, he would hardly have fought with anyone. The only knife he had ever touched was a surgical knife. He knows how to use a gun, but his level is average and he didn't practice it specifically. As a black doctor in an underground clinic, there are always many bodyguards around. What's going on? Isn't black doctor considered a doctor? Moreover, no one would provoke doctors. People in the underground world are often injured, and if they offend doctors, they don't want to live anymore. Especially no one would provoke him. That famous, black-hearted doctor. Mainly referring to the fact that he received a relatively large amount of money, but Nanling felt aggrieved. However, his skills are really good, and he is worth it. Do you understand? It also refers to the large number of lives in his hands. After all, doctors are people who can accurately call out the scientific names of every bone and muscle they break. In his past life, his physical skills were quite good, but they were only good. Killing was just a side job, and there was no way he could save people and earn more money. Therefore, his physical skills are completely incomparable to Jin. But that's how life is, how to say, another village with hidden willows and bright flowers. The experiment seems to be somewhat useful. The body quickly dodged before the consciousness, and Nanling even showed a slightly surprised expression when she saw Qin Jiu. But the fierce attack of Qin Jiu did not stop, with each move being strong and heavy, and even worse, each time it was aimed at the key point. Throat, midsection, armpits, under ribs, lower abdomen, and lower genitalia. Nanling cursed inwardly, his body moving non-stop like a swimming fish dodging through a crevice in the rock. Vodka gradually turned from indifference to surprise on the side. Being able to persist under my elder brother for such a long time, although only able to dodge awkwardly, is still excellent enough. This quality has already stepped on the threshold to enter the action group. Moreover, he heard that this is a pure newcomer with almost no training. After experiencing a few minutes of one-sided beating like a storm, Qin Jiu suddenly stopped playing. Just like when he started doing something suddenly. Qin Jiu smiled, his dark green eyes revealing a hint of interest. Interesting. Nanling almost fainted upon hearing these words. On the one hand, it is tiring, both physically and mentally. On the other hand, I don't want to be noticed by a pervert like you at all, But just now, the killing intent of Qin Jiu. If he deliberately hides himself, Nanling really thinks that Qin Jiu will kill him. I was really forced. Nanling thought sadly. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. I feel like I'm about to be silenced. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. I feel like I'm about to be silenced as a result, a month passed like this. Nanling is forced to practice with Qin Jiu every day, and the time is gradually increasing, making him physically and mentally exhausted every day, feeling his body drained. Day and night, I hope that Qin Jiu can quickly end his vacation and return to become a model worker. Of course, the progress is also very obvious. The memories of his past life gradually come back to him, coupled with the physical benefits of this body and the diligent efforts of Qin Jiu, his physical skills have surpassed his peak period in his past life. Qin Wine also taught him the usage of various firearms, and now Nanling's marksmanship is not only better than in his previous life. Speaking of Qin Jiu, it's a true love for one's profession. A model worker deserves his reputation. Nanling thought happily amidst hardships. Perhaps it was his wish that moved the heavens, or perhaps it was because he was really quite miserable that he moved the heavens. In short, after about a month of training with Qin Jiu in Nanling, there was finally a turning point. At the beginning of this peaceful day. Ding dong. The three people in the room all reflexively looked towards the door. After all, this is the stronghold of the black organization, and there is usually no one living there. Generally speaking, no one will knock on the door. Generally speaking. Excuse me. It seems that someone gave such a strange name for some reason. The person outside hesitated for a moment and said, "Is it Mr. Jin? The martini you ordered has arrived." The person outside the door sounded like a middle-aged man's voice, probably a delivery guy. Most people would think so. As someone familiar with the plot of Conan, Nanling knew who the person outside the door was when she heard martini. But he didn't have the chance to meet that person, so he had to pretend to be nervous and look at Qin Jiu. Qin Jiu sneered, and a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes that were not covered by the brim of his hat. The gun in his hand didn't let go and waved towards Nanling. Nanling got up and opened the door. To be honest, he is quite looking forward to it. The person outside the door snatched the gun from his hand as soon as he opened the door, and the cold muzzle pressed against Nanling's artery. "You're really not on guard. Newcomer," he said. "I don't have time to play with you, Belmud," said the cold voice of the Jin. "Ah, I've been discovered." Belmud changed back to his original voice, but the muzzle didn't leave Nanling's neck. He even vaguely rubbed it, like a venomous snake licking his prey. "Are you a newcomer, Chartreuse? That gentleman values you very much. But it's not enough to be so unguarded. Senior Qin Jiu wouldn't let me open the door if he judged me to be in danger, so I think. Maybe he's also a member of the organization," Nanling said calmly. "Do you trust Qin Jiu so much?" Belmud smiled and walked around him towards the house. Members of the organization also kill each other, for example. Qin Jiu has many codenamed members' lives on his hands. "As you said, that gentleman values me very much and I am very loyal to the organization," Nanling shrugged, "so Senior Qin Jiu has no reason to harm me." Belmud chuckled lightly. To be honest, her uncle's easy appearance and her original voice were quite discordant. But it seems that gin and vodka have also become accustomed to it. "Ah, that's a really good answer." "What's up?" Qin Jiu asked impatiently. "Don't be so anxious. How long has it been since we last met?" Belmud sat on the arm of the gin chair, and "I brought a bottle of vermouth over. Do you also have gin here? Do you want to have a glass of martini?" "Don't do anything unnecessary," Qin Jiu glanced at Nanling. Nanling is very panicked. What should I do if I see Belmud flirting with Jin? Will I be silenced? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Qin Ye, Let Go of Me, Ball. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Qin Ye, Let Go of Me, Ball. "Okay, I'm here to inform you that your vacation is over." Belmud clapped his hands soulless. Conclusions. What else? You didn't just come here to tell me this, did you? Qin Jiu remained indifferent. Also. Well, I suddenly became quite interested in the newcomers. Why don't I ask that gentleman for someone? Belmud rubbed his chin and looked at the Jin and said, "What do you think, Jin?" For a moment, Nanling didn't know if he should feel happy. After all, in his opinion, Qin Jiu wouldn't care about such a small character like him, so he might have to hang out with Bai Jia in the future. Although he got rid of Jin. It doesn't seem easy to fool Belmud either. Apart from showing mercy to Xiaolan and Conan, this thousand-faced witch's tactics are quite well known in the organization. After all, she is the woman favored by that gentleman. Maybe at some point, my uncontrollable desire to bounce back will be discovered. But to his surprise, no way, Qin Jiu refused. That gentleman has temporarily joined my action team. Nanling's eyes darkened. I knew it wouldn't be a good thing to be noticed by a pervert like you. I don't want to be a model worker with you, As a saying goes, Shuichi Akai now seems to be acting together with Qin Jiu. It's over, it's over. How can I whiten it after this? Senior Qin Jiu. Nanling tried to resist. I am a researcher. The implication is that I don't want to work outside at all. A task, as a test. Qin Jiu stared coldly at Nanling. That's also what that gentleman meant. After the task is completed, you will return to Galliana's side. As for whether it can be completed or not, there's no need to say much about Qin Jiu. Nanling has already felt the killing intent of Qin Jiu. Nanling suddenly felt that life was difficult. Of course, it still cannot be revealed on the surface. Since it's the task of the organization, I'm more than happy. Smiling on the face, feeling guilty in the heart. Okay, Belmard begged, uninteresting, and stopped bothering. Goodbye then. I was specially transferred back from the United States this time, and I didn't even have time to finish the mission there. It's just for you, Jin. She blinked and blew a kiss at the Jin. Qin Jiu didn't even look at her. No wonder. Belmard, which was supposed to be in the United States, suddenly appeared in Japan to investigate the issue of Jin. Nanling seems to have some thoughts. But there must be nothing found. How could Qin Jiu betray the organization? It seems that Belmard also knows that this is just a passing act. There is your mission goal in the phone. Qin Jiu threw him a black phone. It is a very ancient style. Conan world, this technology tree. Nanling, who is used to using smartphones, sighed. I raised my hand and caught the phone. After opening, I clicked on the email page. Surprisingly, it was actually related to the previous action where Qin Jiu made a mistake. So, is this the investigation result of Belmard? 2 peripheral personnel. And my task is? Well, after catching someone, interrogate them and silence them. This kind of thing can be easily done by Belmard. Was it specifically left to do tasks for oneself? Well, probably Qin Wine is like an examiner or something. That's great. I don't really want to join his action team. After completion, you can rest assured to go back and fish and row for research, while also researching how to save Scotland. He had heard that there was a new member of the organization called Zhu. Obviously Shuichi Akai. But since he had not been able to obtain the code name at this time, he probably just joined. So there is at least 1 year left until Scotland's death. I understand. Is there a time limit? 3 days. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Stupid Humans. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Stupid Humans. Nanling sighed. It's really short-sighted. Knowing the organization's caution, or boldly and hastily betraying. Do you think the organization won't notice? Or do they expect the FBI to help them? Despite being on Japanese soil, I am seeking help from the FBI. Although the public security may not be able to protect you, that's all. The daily routine with goals on that document seems to be of little use. After all, these two are probably going to be scared out of their wits now and may not be hiding somewhere. However, the organization has information about their families. Thinking about this gives Nanling a headache. He doesn't like to threaten other people's families, but for 3 days. Nanling is not a detective. Who knows where those 2 people went? It's impossible for him to find 2 people in the vast Japan. Organizations are not unaware of this. So, is this also intentional? It's really deliberate. I just want to see if he can be ruthless. Although he didn't like doing this, Nanling didn't hesitate to choose the latter between the lives of others and his own. He's not a holy mother. Has he ever done such a thing in his past life? Excess sympathy cannot exist in him. Thinking of this, Nanling put down his coffee cup and tapped the armrest with his fingers. 2 people, one surnamed Sato and the other surnamed Okamoto. He spent a day tying Sato's daughter and Okamoto's sister together. Then we arranged to meet them at this coffee shop. So, why do you think the organization doesn't know your family information? Nanling looked up at the 2 men in front of her. Both of them looked pale, and Okamoto could barely maintain his composure. Sato seemed to be on the verge of losing control. You take. Shoo. Nanling smiled and pressed a finger close to her lips, shaking the remote control in her hand. Disobedient children should be punished. Nanling told them that he had tied a bomb and hostages together, and if they acted recklessly, they would press the remote control in their hands and send them to the west. Of course it was to deceive them. How could he possibly have some bomb in his hand? The organization probably wanted to see what he could do with his own abilities, so no assistance was provided except for the initial intelligence. Those two people are probably sleeping soundly now, and the amount of medication he prescribed is enough to keep them sleeping for 24 hours. Alright, Nanling clapped her hands. Let's talk about it in another place. By the way, please help me settle the account. He looks very happy. With a light tone, thank you so much. To outsiders, it must be a very strange combination, with a smiling young man walking ahead and two middle-aged men with earthy faces following behind. Nanling feels very happy. For the first time in 3 years, I am so free to come out and have fun, and I can also bully people at the same time. It's simply too joyful. If it weren't for the black side's destined failure, Nanling would have wanted to stay at the distillery forever. It is reasonable to build one's own happiness on the pain of others. Oh, by the way, don't think about taking action. My hand is resting on the remote control, and if it scares me, my hand won't be very stable. It's not that I can't beat it, I'm just too lazy to take action. Nanling took them all the way to a safe house prepared by the organization. Anyway, these two people are destined to be dead. It's nothing to know anything. After Nanling separated the two individuals and detained them, he began to inquire. Alright, I don't want to take action, so please tell me for yourself. Sato seemed to have been holding it for a long time. As soon as Nanling finished speaking, this guy confessed everything he knew. As expected by Nanling, he is just a nobody and joining the organization was also forced. Now that he is afraid, he wants to leave. How could it be so easy? Nanling shook his head. Even if he wanted to leave the organization, he had to carefully plan step by step. This kind of ordinary person. Haha. So, Mr. Okamoto, it's your turn. End of this chapter. Chapter 7, You're forcing me to return to my old job. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7, You're forcing me to return to my old job, why just? Whoa. Don't you say it. Nanling is helpless. Mr. Okamoto probably knew he would eventually die, or he didn't care about his sister. For whatever reason, he refused to speak. You just need to talk nonsense about the same reasons as Mr. Sato. If you die happily, I can handle it. Your family won't have any problems. Why? Nanling sighed and stabbed Mr. Okamoto again. Don't worry, I have a surgical knife that has been disinfected. It will definitely not be infected. Okamoto was tied to a chair at this moment, with over a dozen small knife wounds all over his body. It seemed like he had been stabbed indiscriminately, but in fact, he had not injured a single vital point, all of which were painful wounds that would never cause death. He was currently with his eyes wide open, and could only make a sound because his mouth was blocked. A small pool of blood had already accumulated under the chair, and the ticking sound sounded particularly eerie in this quiet room. Okamoto's eyes were filled with fear, as he watched the young man effortlessly subdue him as an adult, skillfully tying him up. Then, he slowly and leisurely slashed one after another, as if he didn't care about the life in front of him, but decisively and fiercely handed him over like some kind of object. Nanling was still muttering to Okamoto, "Tell me what's going on here." It was supposed to be a very easy task, but I wanted to finish it quickly. But you see, you must be in this situation now. Is it fun? As he spoke, he stabbed a few more times and said, "And don't worry, I'll stab you to death. Before you decide to speak, I can give you these dozens more. I'm a medical student, you know, which means I can save you if you want to die. It's been a long time since I started doing this." Nanling thought. He initially studied medicine in order to better grasp the physical condition and structure of the interrogated person, thereby making the interrogation more efficient. That is to say, his initial purpose in studying medicine was to bring greater pain to people. But that was a long time ago, and later he felt that this matter had no future, and he was not a sadist, so he switched to becoming a doctor. Of course, if it's this kind of commission, he will still accept it, just give more money. As long as the money is in place, everything is easy to say, and he has no intelligence that cannot be verified. Ah, I'm sorry, I forgot I blocked your mouth. Nanling pretended to suddenly notice this. I'll let you go, okay? But I don't like to hear people scream, so you better pray that you don't make any noise, otherwise I'll just play with you again, okay? Okamoto nodded wildly. The young man in front of me, who had always been smiling, suddenly frowned when he was just threatened and then returned to normal. This unpredictable nature is as dangerous as a lunatic. Ha! 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 I say everything. Give me a good time. Okamoto's voice trembled, and the waves of pain coming from all over his body were completely unbearable for an untrained ordinary person like him. Is that right? Nanling clapped her hands, but considering your lack of cooperation just now. He deliberately lengthened his tone and saw with satisfaction that the person in front of him gradually became frightened. If you're not telling the truth, I'll use this bottle of alcohol to disinfect your inside and outside. Got it. Okamoto breathed a sigh of relief, almost thinking that the boy wanted to continue playing games with him. Busily speaking out everything he knew in one breath. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. How are you a pervert again? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. How are you a pervert again? I didn't expect Okamoto to really have intelligence about the FBI in his mouth. He said there is another FBI informant in the organization. Although it's not very important. That's natural, how could non-staff like Okamoto know any secrets? It's estimated that the organization will start a small-scale inventory again. When Nanling was still locked up in the laboratory, he encountered several organizational inspections, big and small. After each inspection, a group of people were sent in as human mice. Of course, almost all of them died in the end. It's best to die peacefully. There are several more tragic ones, and the screams at the moment of death lasted for several days. At first, many people on that floor could hear them, but eventually they gradually became smaller and disappeared. Everyone knows what their fate is. When Nanling first heard this information, her first reaction was that she was not talking about Shuichi Akai. Later, I thought that if Shuichi Akai was an informant of the FBI, it would not be so simple, and this level of intelligence could not be known by such small fish. So maybe some unlucky guy has been implicated. Anyway, it's not his business. He himself is still under observation, and the organization is unlikely to give him any chance of contact with institutions like the FBI. After all, he is an important asset of the organization. This matter is likely to be pushed onto Qin Jiu again in the end. I have no choice, my work ability is really strong. Nanling handled the bodies of the two with a relaxed heart and happily returned to report to Qin Jiu. The thought of being able to get rid of the Jin and start her own whitening plan after this matter was over made Nanling unusually happy. Vodka watched as the boy with a cheerful expression hummed a song into the room. As soon as he thought about the interrogation process he had seen before, and looked at his higher mood than before, it was obvious that he had gained unparalleled joy from the abuse of others. How could this be a pervert again? Vodka is tired of dim sum. I'm back, Senior Jin. Nanling walked around the room and only saw Vodka, not even the shadow of Jin. So he turned his head and said, Vodka Senior, you know. Did you forget something? Nanling was interrupted before he could finish speaking, and his neck suddenly felt a chill. Guns. Qin Jiu was holding a gun towards his neck. Where did this person appear from? How can I walk without any sound? Nanling's hair stood up. So he casually raised his hands and said, I don't understand. Their family is in the basement. Take care of it, Qin Jiu said succinctly. Nanling let out a silent sigh. When he tied people up earlier, he directly used medication to lay them down without even tying the rope. After taking a photo, he left them in an empty factory. Not even the door is locked. After they wake up, they can leave on their own. After all, his goal is those two people, not their families. When he did this, he already thought that the organization probably didn't intend to let them go, but he still did it. It's not out of boredom of sympathy, but because he really doesn't like to involve such things with unrelated people. It just doesn't seem to be of much use, as Qin Jiu is probably monitoring all his actions throughout. My every move should be in their eyes, right? After all, it's an exam. Okay. Nanling shrugged his shoulders, but he didn't really care about this matter. Of course it's best not to involve them, but if it does, it can only be said that their fate is not good. It will be ready soon, the efficacy of the two people has already passed. When he came down, he heard two suppressed and frightened cries. Shoo! He comforted the two people with a gentle smile, it won't hurt. His face, how to say it, is really good. Looking, and at the age of 15, his eyebrows and eyes have not yet grown, green and soft, looking particularly harmless to humans and animals. The two of them were really stunned for a moment. Then Nanling cleanly and accurately stabbed both of them in the back of the neck. When the two died, they remained stunned and painless. I'll just say it doesn't hurt. Nanling smiled and put away the surgical knife, with a pure and kind expression, and her hands were covered in bright red. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Life is so difficult. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Life is so difficult. Later on, Qin Jiu didn't make things difficult for him anymore. Perhaps it's because I have a job on hand. In short, Nanling returned to the research group as he had hoped. The next goal. Nanling calculated with her fingertips, besides fishing, paddling, and rubbing against her salary. It seems like there's nothing else. No, if you want to think about something serious, Nanling rubbed her temples. Firstly, avoid meeting sherry, rye, and bourbon, and it's best not to see Kiel either. In short, resolutely avoid all undercover agents. However, it's easier for others to handle. Sherry and himself are both in the research group, so how can we avoid this? Shirley was strictly monitored by the organization due to her parents, so she couldn't leave. However, with his identity, it is very likely that he will enter Shirley's core group in the future. She is also the main character in the plot, which must be praised. If we had known each other at the distillery, it would have been based on her level of disgust towards the members of the organization. He couldn't imagine how Shirley's favorability would go up in the future. Moreover, Sherry was the latest to leave the organization and would not leave until the main storyline began. In the middle of these 5 years, as a member of the research group, he is almost sure to meet Sherry. By contrast, it may be that the action group he had previously despised was better able to conceal its identity in front of the members of the Red Team. Bourbon is a mystic, Scotland is about to die, Rye is a traitor in 3 years, and Kiel seems to have been away from Japan. Well, upon thinking about it, why not just follow Qin Wine before? No, this won't work either. As a capable member of the organization, Qin Jiu is too prominent. Working with him will definitely be noticed by a group of people from the red side. This Nanling feels a bit like crying. Besides, we also need to find a way to save Scotland. Putting aside the purpose of gaining favor with the red side, Nanling also wanted to save him for personal reasons. It was really because the plot was too uncomfortable for viewers, and 3 undercover agents forced one of them to death. Just thinking about it makes it difficult to calm down. However, if we want to save Scotland, it will inevitably affect the following plot. And Nanling doesn't really want to do this. Because he is afraid that such a significant change in the plot will affect every character that follows. A butterfly flapping its wings in South America can cause a storm in the Pacific. Nanling doesn't want to be that butterfly. He only had a rough impression of the subsequent plot. He is not clear about many details. What if? What if this change would cause the plot to freeze and even lead to the death of the main character? What should we do then? Can he still feel at ease fishing? So, it's better to leave this matter to the protagonists to solve on their own. I only need to be responsible for saving Scotland. When they saw Scotland still alive, their misunderstanding was naturally resolved. Of course, another reason is that, isn't it fun to watch Shuichi Akai fight with Yasuhito? So, in order to save Scotland, we cannot let the other two people know. It's quite difficult. Because of this, Nanling became excited instead. The miracle of resurrection. Is it? Although it cannot be truly achieved, some medicine can be used. It seems like magic. Nanling shook her head. At this time, the great magician Heiyu Thief has already died. Of course, Nanling knew he was faking death. But apart from this, he actually doesn't know anything else. Speaking of which, he is quite tempted by the contouring technique mastered by Heiyu Thief. In the future, let's see if we can scrape a little bit from Belmore. Or maybe we can just go find Kwai Do. Let's talk about the future. Now. Nanling looked up at Galliano, who was focused on conducting experiments, first gain the trust of the organization. And by the way, develop a fake death drug for Scotland. Maybe this drug will become even more magical in the world of science. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Art of Time Fast Forward. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The Art of Time Fast Forward. 1 year later. Nanling looked at the familiar building in front of her. Fortunately, I came back in time. This year, Nanling has really been rich and colorful. Not long after he returned to the research group, he hadn't figured out how to avoid the ubiquitous group of undercover agents in the organization. The entire group led by Galliano was transferred to Western Europe together. At that time, Nanling breathed a sigh of relief and began to worry about how to return to Japan and save Scotland in the future. So he started to fish in the organization's work while secretly researching fake death drugs. The progress is even faster than he imagined, let's say much faster. He had also taken fake death pills in his past life, but the restrictions were very strict, the effect time was very short, and people who were not in good health would really die if they took them. So it's actually not very useful. But with the help of Qin, the medicine was studied in less than a month. Moreover, the efficacy is extremely unscientific and can take effect for 24 hours. If placed in a past life, a person with a heart arrest of 24 hours can almost be confirmed to have died. Nanling couldn't help but marvel at the power of Qin. At that time, when conducting the experiment, he almost didn't deceive Galliano, but Nanling barely managed to get by. This also strengthened his determination to find an opportunity to eliminate Galliano. After all, with such a boss watching from above, he couldn't let go of many things to do. But when he had already started preparing the plan, Galliano pounded himself and died. The cause of death was a sudden acute myocardial infarction, which was not rescued. It is normal and there is no doubt about it. Galliano is, after all, old. The organization also sent someone to inspect, but no suspicious points were found. So Nanling naturally took over the research group of the entire Western European branch. And because of his excellent physical skills and marksmanship, the action team of the Western Europe division often sought his help after hearing that he was considered a student of Qin Ye, Nanling. Actually only taught for a month. After all, Western Europe is not the main business territory of the organization. Although its strength is not weak, there is still a gap compared to the Japanese branch. This behavior was also tacitly approved by the gentleman. After all, Qin Jiu gave him a pretty good evaluation in that mission. In this way, he became almost the only member in the organization who could repeatedly jump in both research and action. During this period, Qin Jiu came twice, and members from other branches also came here to carry out tasks. Nanling was also the member who assisted them in their actions. After all, he is quite strong. Then the reputation became higher with each passing day. Nanling was a little guilty. Now the undercover must have heard the code name of Chart, but no one has ever seen him. This is different from his original strategy of fishing to reduce presence, but with a higher identity, it is still more convenient to do some things. For example, in order to come back in time to save Scotland, he took a leave of absence from the gentleman before Scotland was suspected, and successfully rushed back with the reason, "I am Japanese after all, so I want to come back and see my hometown." As soon as the leave was approved, Scotland was suspected. So the gentleman may feel that one of his interrogation experts happened to be in Japan, so he didn't have to waste his time and asked him to participate in the investigation into Scotland. If he is really an undercover agent, maybe he can still be interrogated. Anyway, in the eyes of that gentleman, it is impossible for him to know Scotland, so his investigation is absolutely objective. Speaking of organizing 365 days without rest throughout the year, and even taking a leave would result in being caught as a laborer, it is indeed not suitable for him as a salted fish. Today, Nanling has once again strengthened his belief that he must whitewash. Thank you for your recommended tickets. End of this chapter.